Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, hello, readers and authors. This is my fifth session with the Festival of Storytellers. It's been a great experience. I've talked about myself. I've talked about my 3 books. I'll talk a little more about them tonight. I also talk a little bit about what some of the things that influenced me in my writing. But in speaking of those things that influenced me the most, I thought I would introduce my wife, Dorothy, to you tonight because she has been a big part of my writing. So I'll just introduce Dorothy.
Hello, everyone. I don't know that I've been a big part of Tom's writing other than I love to read, and Tom has a real gift. All 3 books were all his ideas, all his thoughts, and he's done a really great job. The first book that he wrote, The Deacon, took a lot of courage as it was his personal story. And I just started out being a cheerleader and a supporter. And then after he wrote a couple chapters, he showed it to me and I was blown away as a reader. I thought he had a really great ability. I made a couple suggestions. So that's the extent of my role, but I'm happy that I'm some kind of a help to him.
Well, thanks a lot for those kind words. Cost me $10 for that. No, but Dorothy has been a great help. Sometimes, as you know, when you start to write, you get done a chapter or a paragraph, and you really just need someone to look it over. And Dorothy would not just look it over for grammar, but she would say, what are you trying to say in this paragraph or this chapter? Who's your audience? So she would always ask me questions about, who am I writing this for? And that really kept me centered and focused because a lot of times we get carried away. We think that we're writing things that make sense to us, but they may not be very moving to the reader. So Dorothy's was a big help. And thank you for that comment. I have a comment already that Dorothy is a very lovely person and very supportive, and she is that. Well, I thought I would start out tonight just basically talking a little bit about my latest effort, and that is a book that is probably not going to be out for another month or 2. It's called Magnolia. Okay, Magnolia was a small town that I grew up in. Okay, and the book Magnolia, A View of Heaven, is that. It is a view of heaven. Now, we've all seen movies of heaven and what it could be like. And we all have questions, right? Are we going to see our relatives in heaven? Is there going to be food and drink? I'd like to know that there's going to be wine in heaven, personally. Will we see our pets? That's always a question that comes up. Will there be sex in heaven? All these questions no one can really answer definitively. Everyone has their ideas, as I do mine, and I base my ideas on a lot of background that I've had in philosophy and religion. But it's a fun book. It's about a man who passes away, and but before he passes away, he's in the hospital, and he goes back and forth from two states. He at one point is in a lot of pain in his chest, a lot of coughing, and then he kind of goes into a unconscious state. And all of a sudden, he's back in his hometown of Magnolia, and no more pain, and just no more coughing, and so much energy. Where does all this energy come from? And so, unfortunately, he gets woken up and he's back in the hospital with that pain again. And his daughter's there. And, what were you were dreaming, Dad? And here, this flip-flopping goes on for a while until finally he passes away and he starts his journey into heaven from the small town of Magnolia. So I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll like some of the things that happened back in the 1960s, actually, and the energy that he has. And I hope that you'll find hope in this book, because more than just a fictional book, it's a book that will provide some insight. Not to say that I know exactly what heaven's like, but it's just comforting to think about heaven in a realistic point of view. Just to think that, wow, there is something more. Do I consider Magnolia as a view from heaven? Actually, it's a starting point. It's a starting point because this particular character in the book, Lou, who was actually standing in for myself, grew up in Magnolia, and he had such a great childhood. He was so free. He didn't think a lot about what people thought of him and, all the cultural influences that we have today. It was a time when he was just so free. And I believe that is a perfect starting point for heaven. Jesus said to us that, heaven is like, welcoming a child. A child shall be welcomed into heaven. And why is that? And I think it's because a child is so free and so, just carefree, and it just hasn't been influenced yet. And he takes in everything. He takes in the leaves, the colors of the tree, the Tarzan swing in his backyard, riding his Schwinn bike. And he's just taking those experiences in. Also taking in the candy store where he goes and buys a lot of candy, And even in my own childhood, it's a wonder I have any teeth left. I ate so much candy back in the days of Magnolia. So, it's a fun book. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, myself, I was not a writer from the beginning. My life had a lot of unexpected turns. My first book, The Deacon, An Unexpected Life. I was a deacon in the Catholic Church. I was a retired engineer. I was an engineer for over 45 years. I was married for 40 years. As I mentioned, I went through the whole diaconate training of 5.5 to 6 years. And all of a sudden, everything came to an end. I lost my wife very tragically, suddenly, to suicide. And I went through a grieving process. Grieving is hard with losing your spouse, but suicide makes it a little more complex. Being a deacon in the Catholic Church made it also complex because I knew that as a deacon, I couldn't marry again. You're only allowed to get married one time in the Catholic Church as a deacon. And you sign an oath that, when my wife passes away, if I stay a deacon, I will stay single. And that was fine for a while. But after 2 years, I was lonely, and I found the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a healthy thing. I would go on retreats. I would like time alone. But after 2 years of realizing that I have no one to really share my life with, not just the main big things, but the little things, what I've read for that day, um, any experience I might have had, and then as I was going through all of this, Dorothy, as it turns out, she lost her husband rather suddenly as well. And we both kind of found each other. We believe that our spouses, kind of brought us together. I know that sounds crazy, right? So going through all of that, the suicide, the grieving, I had open heart surgery during all that time. And then trying to make that decision, I was losing my mind. And my psychologist told me, therapist, he said, Tom, write some things down. Write some things down. It's a good, cathartic way to confront a lot of the things that are worrying you. And there were, let's face it, my life was perfect. And all of a sudden, everything happened. So I started writing them down. And as it turns out, that became The Deacon. And you'll read in this is really a true story. It's my memoir. I was throwing a little bit of fiction in there to make it interesting and moving. But you'll read that it's very passionate. And some of my experiences as a deacon, I think you will be very fascinated with. And there's another example where Dorothy really helped me out, because I had some chapters mixed up, and she looked at it and says, I think that chapter on the fire should be the first chapter. And I'll let you read that, because it is a very dynamic chapter. But after writing this book, I started getting a lot of good reviews. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, wow, maybe I can still do the things that I love doing as a deacon as a writer. And that's what I did. No longer in a fancy robe or in a church. I do it in various scenes and various settings, which kind of led me to my second book, and that is the Wisdom from the Wick. That's a question coming up. Sharon comments, how important is it? How important is a good support system when it comes to the writing process? Well, I've been trying to, pretty much kind of allude to that. That's a main benefit of writing. For me, a lot of it came from Dorothy. I have a lot of, friends I would pass the things around, but, just relying on someone close to you, and it's going through a lot of the same things you're going through, makes a world of difference. So I would say a support system is very important. Did you try to reflect on your childhood experiences in the Book of Magnolia? Oh yeah. I when I was a boy, my dad put a Tarzan swing up in my backyard, hanging off of this 300-year oak tree, huge oak tree, which I kind of used in the cover of this book. And they used to sit around and play games, my dad and my uncle, and they would say, Tom, there's a lion in front of the house and he's coming at you. How fast can you get up that Tarzan swing? So I would scurry up the Tarzan swing, and they would laugh. But I'll tell you what, when I got in high school, I was one of the few people that could climb a rope in the gym. I went right up that thing. But all my experiences there, it's just so freeing. Riding my bike, getting candy in the candy store, going across the street at a bakery and getting a brownie for 15 cents. All good experiences, but more than just fun experiences and eating candy and drinking cream soda. More than all of that, it was that freedom that I experienced as a child. And it was that freedom that I believe I was probably the most closest to God during that time in my life. Now, I realize not everyone has those moments. They have different moments, but I believe that you'll be able to pick out my moments and also reflect on your own. So here's a comment. What sparked your interest in exploring the concept of heaven and writing about what it might be like? Well, after the deacon, I was thinking in terms of how do I continue doing what I love doing as a deacon. And I thought that, the best thing I can do is to preach, but in a way that's not the same as being preaching in a church, not preaching to the choir, so to speak. So my second book, Wisdom from the Wick, turns out that the Wick is a tavern. It's a neighborhood bar. And it's called the Warwick Tavern. So the locals call it the Wick. Now, most people go to a neighborhood tavern to have a few drinks and talk with their friends. But in this particular bar, there was an individual, John, who people were attracted to. They were attracted to listen to him. And they would pull up a bar stool next to him. And it was almost like he knew what they needed to talk about. So he started talking about life and how some of their problems fit into all the things going on in their life. It was uncanny how he knew what they needed to hear. So yeah, they may have went to this Warwick Tavern for a drink, but they left feeling much closer to God. Now, there's a question here. How do you navigate the balance between the tangible and the abstract in your descriptions of heaven? Okay, well, I think that heaven is a lot closer to us on earth than we realize. I believe that this earth that we're in, this earthly realm, is just another dimension of heaven. And as you make the transition, you will be met with, I'll call this person a guardian angel, someone who's known you from the beginning, someone who's been with you your entire life, and someone who can take you through the various dimensions of heaven. Answering those questions that I brought up before about, is there food in heaven? What will I do in heaven? And the person, Lou, will meet people, some that he knew and some that he didn't know. So I don't know if it's such a day and night dimension difference as much as it is an awareness difference. So much we'll become so much more aware of things. And I think that's where I kind of take that journey. So just getting back to the wisdom from the Wick, this particular guy, John, not only did he try to explain things that people ask, he went out of his way and drew pictures on the bar, right on a notepad. And I captured them in the book as well. And depending on who he's talking to, there's a different level of understanding. But he happened to realize, he kind of sensed the level that he had to describe. So someone who was, let's say, very religious, he talked to them a little differently than someone who really didn't give a damn about God or any kind of religion. In fact, there was an individual was watching a school shooting on the TV, and he heard John over talking, and he said, if there's a God, why would they let this happen? Why would he let that happen? So he ends up talking to this individual. Now, naturally, that type of conversation with him is going to be a lot different than someone who's a churchgoer, so to speak. As a question from Lois, it's rare to find an author who writes a good faith-based fiction. You are an inspiration. Keep it up. Well, thank you. When you look at all three of these books that I've commented on, there is a common denominator that runs through them. And I would say that that common denominator is hope. It's hope. Hope in the midst of grieving, hope in the midst of rejection, hope in the midst of death, hope in the midst of just, losing your way. And, there's so many good people in the world. So I feel that there's more positive in this world than negative, and hope and peace and love. Now I draw from a lot of sources that just, not in my own head. I draw from people, experts on love, that have written about love. What is love? And as you see in the book, in heaven, love and God are almost synonymous. I almost had that question, but it went away. So I think the common thread throughout all three books is love, peace, and hope. And as I continue to write, I hope to stay with that theme as I go down the path. Because as I said, I've always felt that closeness to God, and I feel that this is a way to as a calling that I feel like I have. How do you approach conveying the emotional and spiritual aspects of heaven in your writing? Well, as it turns out, as an engineer, I was very good at making things simple, and that was kind of a little gift I had. I had ways to make the complex very simple, and the way I would do that was through diagrams. And you've heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And complex systems are hard to understand by just reading words. Our nature, whether it's our physical nature, our spiritual nature, our mental, is also very complex. So I use a lot of pictures in the book to kind of bring out the connection between those three states, and I think I do a good job on that. But that's how I would bring it together. Confucius once said, I said this in the other sessions, that it's better to save one life than to build a 7-story pagoda. And sometimes I think we get a little too hung up on building pagodas, and not enough in trying to help people, trying to save people. Where is God? He's not up here. Okay, you'll find him here. The same place you'll find love. And yes, there's a lot of complexities when you think about the mind, the body, the soul. So many experts, and so many conflicting ideas. But I think when you give in to what one of my favorite philosophers, Blaise Pascal, said, he said, the heart has its own reasoning that the mind doesn't even understand. So I bring out a lot of the authors and that have meant so much to me, in my life. And some of the books, The Alchemist, for example, by Paulo Coelho, The Shack, a great view of the Trinity, right? I would definitely read The Shack or watch the movie. The Razor's Edge was a book I read way back in college. Illusions, Richard Bach. Seeds of Contemplation and The 7-Story Mountain by Thomas Merton. Joshua and Pensies from Blaise Pascal. Another comment, how did these experiences growing up in Magnolia improve your writing and imagery of of your use of heaven? Well, I basically thought back to what it was like to be a child again. What it was like during the course of a day. I only had one thing I had to worry about, and that was to be home for dinner. And other than that, I had so much freedom. And I started thinking about that freedom. And I believe that that is a starting point in heaven. We're going to be so joyful and so happy that you're not going to look back, because those you leave behind, you know that they're coming after you. And I believe that that feeling we had as a child is gave me my view of heaven. And I think that you'll enjoy that view as well. So we're coming to the end of the session. I have enjoyed these sessions. I hope you look at my website, thomasfargnoli.com. Okay, in there you'll find out more about me. You'll even see me do some magic. I do some magic tricks. I was a magician, and I still do magic from time to time. So I have magic tricks in there. I also have some everything about something about each of the 3 books, as well as about myself. So I think you'll enjoy the website. I keep trying to make it better, but it's right now it'll have all 3 books. Of course, the Magnolia book is not available yet, and it's probably another 2 months away. So, but keep the website around, and you can also get my email from the website, and feel free to send me any questions you might have or any thoughts you might have. So I guess we're coming close to the end of our time here. And again, I just wanted to thank all the authors out there, and I wish you all the success. I would say that just follow your heart, and make it, knock them out. Okay, someone's going to add wisdom from New York. I think you really like that book. It's takes place in a bar. It's definitely what things that happen in a bar. I don't pull any punches when it comes to that. One particular point, someone throws a pepper and hits somebody in the head with a cherry pepper. So that actually happened. I have experience of that. So take your time. It's a book that I put a lot of time into, and it basically takes 5 years of my sermons as a deacon and rolls them into conversations in a bar. So go slow with it, because I think you'll really enjoy it. Any other questions? Well, thanks, Dorothy, for joining me.
Thank you.
And we look forward to more experiences with the Festival of Storytellers.
Good luck to all the authors out there.